The United States Supreme Court issued a massive, high-stakes election law ruling, completely reversing a federal appeals court in a state voting law challenge. In a major showdown over mail-in ballots, the Supreme Court officially ruled that states can count absentee ballots that arrive after Election Day, so long as they are postmarked by the election day itself. But the real shock isn't just the final ruling. In a dynamic 5-4 opinion authored by Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the Supreme Court completely rejected the legal theories that were pushed by the RNC, and they drew a line between the act of voting and the back-end process of ballot receipt. This ruling doesn't just affect one state. It upholds the election framework of roughly 30 states across the nation that have very similar deadlines in these types of laws. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down this ruling by the Supreme Court, the split between the majority and also the conservative dissenters who disagreed with this finding. We also need to discuss why this fundamentally alters the legal landscape for the upcoming election cycle. Now, before we jump into what the Supreme Court did in this ruling, if you like this type of content and you want to ensure that you get it going forward, make sure to subscribe to the channel and also turn on all notifications to never miss these videos when I release them. Now, I also want to mention one of the main supporters of the channel, which is Attorneys on Retainer, and I'm also want to announce something critical that has just happened with AOR. AOR just added in a new benefit to all members. So it's critical that you have, legal defense, legal protection, which AOR offers. They're a law firm that will protect you if you ever have to use your firearm in self-defense. But it's also critical that you have the training, for those types of situations when they come up. And that is why AOR announced a new partnership with Achilles Heel Tactical. Now, I will tell you guys that I was a critical part in onboarding Achilles Heel Tactical with AOR. I've taken multiple classes with Rick and his team over at AHT. I continue to take classes every single year with them. And to me, they are amazing trainers. They have amazing instruction for all levels. And that is why AOR wanted to offer this to their members. So right now, if you sign up to become an AOR member using my links down below, and you can also use my code ARMSCHOLAR to save you some money off the sign-up fee. But once you become a member, you will get access to the membership portal where they're going to have online video training that will continue to roll out. They're going to put out more instructionals over time, but also you will get a critical and a significant discount to also go train with Rick and his team over at Achilles Heel Tactical in person. So that is an added benefit that AOR is now going to offer you as a member. So if you're interested, again, you can find them using the links down below. Now, to understand how we reached this point where this got to the Supreme Court, we have to look at how a lower federal court recently ruled on this same election law practice and this issue. This entire battle centers on the Mississippi law, which allows certain residents to vote absentee by mail or common carrier. Under Mississippi's rules, as long as a ballot is postmarked on or before Election Day and received within 5 business days, it is still counted. In 2024, the RNC and the Mississippi Republican Party and the Libertarian Party filed a massive lawsuit against this law. They argue that the federal election day statutes, which set a uniform Tuesday in November for federal elections, established a hard nationwide deadline for both ballot casting and ballot receipt. Now, on review, the U.S. Court of Appeals in the 5th Circuit agreed with the RNC, issuing a major ruling that held federal law completely preempts Mississippi's statute because ballots must be in the hands of officials on the election day. However, the state of Missouri responded and they launched an appeal and they went straight to the Supreme Court. And this set a critical showdown on this issue, which would impact many states in the country. And recently, the Supreme Court issued a 5-4 ruling upholding Mississippi's mail-in ballot law. Justice Barrett authored majority opinion and was joined by Chief Justice Roberts and the liberal wing of the Supreme Court. Now, in this ruling, they completely rejected the RNC's core argument. Barrett systematically rejected the idea that an election requires immediate receipt. The majority stated that under a fundamental canon of statutory construction, words must be interpreted by their ordinary meaning at the time of enactment. They state that dating back to the 19th century, dictionaries and the Supreme Court precedent have defined an election as the expression of the electorate's choice, the act of choosing a candidate by vote. The court ruled that the electorate's choice is made when the voting is complete, not when the physical ballot is received by the government official that is reviewing those votes. To support this, Justice Barrett pointed to another federal law, which is the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. This law explicitly cross-referenced state laws' deadlines for that type of ballot receipt. The majority pointed out that if federal law had already established a rigid nationwide ballot receipt deadline on a Tuesday night, Congress's own military voting statutes referencing state receipt deadlines would make absolutely no sense. Now, of course, this ruling was met with a scathing dissent from the court's conservative wing and those justices. You had Justice Alito, who penned a lengthy and aggressive dissent, which was joined by Justice Thomas and Gorsuch, and some parts of it were also joined by Justice Kavanaugh. Alito accused the majority of completely misinterpreting the mechanics of an election. The dissent argued that an election is not a piecemeal affair. It is a collective choice by the electorate, which only authoritatively expressed when the entire collection of ballots is completed and handed over to the officials. Alito warned that by allowing ballots to pour in for 5 days or up to 21 days in some states, the majority has opened up a dangerous Pandora's box. The dissent aggressively laid out the real-world consequences of this policy choice, arguing that allowing the collection of ballots to continue past Election Day invites chaos. Alito also cited to some reports of some previous cases and warned that mail-in voting is historically and potentially most vulnerable to manipulation. He painted a grim picture of close, high-stakes presidential elections where initial leads flip days or weeks after those polls close, warning that this type of drawn-out process will severely damage popular faith in the type of election process, and he claims that people will just no longer trust election integrity. But regardless of the dissent's frustration, the legal reality across the United States has now shifted. Because the Supreme Court has completely reversed the Fifth Circuit ruling, the green light has now been given to state legislators to dictate their own ballot receipt terms and when are they going to accept these types of ballots. This means that for the roughly 30 states that use postmark deadlines, those will continue to remain in place and they can be used going forward for the upcoming elections. The majority stated that if the RNC or political challengers want a uniform nationwide ballot receipt deadline, they cannot look to the bench itself to innovate it or to create it. They must go through the democratic process and they have to get Congress to pass that type of law. So the Supreme Court majority has drawn a definitive line in the sand, leaving the administration of mail-in ballots and these types of windows to the states themselves. So that's what's happened in this critical 5-4 Supreme Court election ruling. That's the ruling that they issued, and that's where the Supreme Court split on this issue. So let me know your thoughts down below. Do you disagree with the majority? Do you think the majority got this wrong? And do you agree with the dissenters that this potentially only increases the distrust and skepticism around election when these types of ballots are able to be extended and still counted multiple days after the election closes? Let me know your thoughts and comments down below in the comment section. But if you like this type of video and you want to continue to get these types of videos and these updates going forward, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on all notifications to get these videos when I release them. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.